Hello, friend, and welcome to the U-Turn podcast. This is the absolute place for you if you are ready to create a business, a career, a personal brand, or just a life that you are so proud of. And every single week, I'll be bringing you PhDs, subject matter experts, psychology practitioners, business leaders, all onto the show to elevate your success in your work and also your life so that you can leave a legacy, you can amplify your authority, and you can really skyrocket the amount of opportunities that you are creating for yourself in your career, whether you're in corporate or you're a business owner. My name is Ashley Stahl. I'm an international best-selling author of the book U-Turn. Get unstuck, discover your direction, and design your dream career. And most importantly, I'm the CEO of Wise Whisper Agency. I'm a top 100 TEDx speaker on the internet, and it inspired me to start Wise Whisper because my company now has a completely done-for-you process to get your signature talk written and booked on stage. In fact, we've written more than 100 TEDx talks, and we've placed more than 100 clients on stage as speakers for TEDx events. And now I'm on a mission to help every change maker that I know impact millions and share their story. So right now, I'm excited to bring you right into this week's episode. All right, U-Turn friends, you know how much I love bringing powerful women onto the show. Krista Mashore is no exception. Powerhouse digital marketing expert, 6 times best-selling author, speaker that empowers agents, coaches, entrepreneurs to really optimize their business operations. We were getting into a conversation before I hit record. I was like, this is so good. I'm recording. Generate lead conversions, drive success, and create financial independence. And I want to talk to her today about how did she create that success? What are some things that you need to consider as you're dreaming super big for your career, for your business, for whatever it is that you want to create? Krista, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I was hearing about your success in the beginning. I was like, I'm so excited for you. That's so good, especially right now with the world, so it's great to see that you're doing so well. A lot of it has to do with your amazing attitude. I think you're just, you just exude positive energy.
I hope so. That's the goal. It's interesting. There were 4 years that I was just slow simmer, not making big revenue, just paying my bills because the idea of what I wanted to do just didn't come to me. I had an e-learning platform I scaled and that did great, but then nothing came to me for a long time. And I had a belief that I had peaked. And I feel like that exists in any business owner, because business fluctuates and sometimes people don't realize you don't have a business, you have an offer, or you don't have, you over rely on ads and then the market changes, right? If there's a war, then your ads change because people's attention changes, right? So it's so many factors into business. I thought it really stood out to me just reading that you were in foster care when you were 13.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have, multiple 7-figure business and you have a lot of experience building that. I actually was in the pool in New York City at the Dream Hotel because fun fact for anybody who goes to New York, you have to pay for a beach chair at the Dream Hotel if you want to experience a pool during the summer. There's a couple of hotels with pools. And I met this woman there and she talked about the foster system and how she came from the foster system, but she's actually super passionate about working with or taking on kids from the foster system that are teenagers, because she said that those are the ones that are not wanted, that are not taken because they're already developed. People want a baby, people want a little kid they can grow with. And so she was fostering a lot of kids that were 16, 17, 18 in the key years that they need advice. And it really moved me and it changed me. It made me think as soon as I have the resources and a family and stability, I want to bring a foster, I want to do that. I want to do what she did. I would love to hear a little bit about what gave you this grit for success, despite probably really unstable experiences growing up being in the foster system.
Yeah. So, I always like to preface it with, I kind of grew up in 2 families. I had a very, and I'll say this, I am very close to my mom and dad. We've had some stuff happen with my mom recently. And I've been just devastated to think that something could happen to her, but we are very, very close to my mom and dad. But when I was growing up, as I said, it was I lived in this very happy family with a very loving, stable, supportive dad who had to work a lot to support the family, and a very loving mom who also was very physically abusive. And so, like obviously no one knew about it. I didn't talk about it. And so it got, when I started turning 13, I started running away, and I would live on the streets and live in abandoned buildings and live in the car. And I did that for about a year until finally I broke the law, and I ended up getting sent to juvenile hall, and I spent about 3.5 months there. And then I got sent to a group home. The group home was called Hidden Hills Group Home for Girls, and they would drop me off every day with the other group home girls. And it was like a big target on our backs that we were troubled and bad kids and to stay away from us. It was kind of like more shame, more, not feeling worthy or good or valued, or it was a really rough time. And then from there, I went to a foster home. And when I turned 18, when I graduated, the foster parents said, hey, you got to go. The money's gone. And so your point to foster children, when I graduated from high school and in the foster care, it's like there was no resources, no help. It was like you are literally out on your own to figure it out. And so I did. I had some of my really good friends' parents helped me, and then I just got loans and worked full time and just decided like I want more for my life. So I think one thing I've learned throughout my life is that anything is possible for anyone. And I think a lot of times we look at people that are successful and we think that they were successful because they were in a good family, or they just were built that way, or they have, this means about them. And really it doesn't matter. I have really learned to adapt the philosophy. If somebody else can do it, I can do it. Like if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it,
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's hard, right? Like, especially for women. I mean, building a business is hard. There's the amount of millionaire women is so incredibly low. I don't know the stat, but I'm like you, like I love when I see women doing well and I want to help them. And, and that's not the case for a lot of people. There's a lot of jealousy and animosity and all that. But I think like there's so much possibility, right? But you have to push, and you have to have grit, and you have to take risks, and you have to be consistent and know that you're going to, like, man, I've had some really hard times in business, and I've had some really great times. I've had months where we've had $2 or $3 million in profit in a month. And I've had months where I'm writing checks for a couple $100,000, you know, and I'm like, especially, the past year and a half, we've had to completely adapt and adjust because we were growing so incredibly fast. And we made some major mistakes. I was telling you, like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, right? And then we've done some great things. So, it's the alternative is worse. Like for me, working for somebody else is worse than anything besides working for myself. I don't want to be under the bright fluorescent lights with some, 25-year-old who's made his way up the ladder telling me what to do and having his thumb on me. I want to like create my own life and success and freedom. So.
Okay, that brings me to a really random question that's been present for me. So hopefully it helps other entrepreneurs listening, is like, when you're winning, I feel a sense of guilt that I'm collecting any more cash than anyone else. I know that that's a mindset thing, but when I see people working so hard, and I'm so grateful, obviously I compensate them and I take care of them, but I still feel like, oh man, like, do I get to be the one that's winning? Like this sense of guilt. Did you ever experience that? Or do you feel like you just work so hard, you were like, this is mine to have?
I think that's a good thing to ask. I think for me, sometimes I will overcompensate. Like, I mean, I'd give $100,000 bonuses and like things that the average normal person would never do. Right. And I did it. I think someone's like, well, oh, I don't want them to feel like, but I mean, heavy is the heart that wears the crown, right? Like when you're doing well, and you take all the burden of your team and the risk and the money, and you win for it. And then when you're not, it's the same. You take all the risk and the burden and the stress, and it's with you all the time. So if I had to tell you another lesson, I would say be careful doing what I did. I would give, like, one month I gave, I sort of got $250,000 in bonuses, right? Wow. And which was an emotional decision based upon, we had a great month, this wasn't expected, here you go. And people were like, wow, but then when times are difficult and hard, they quickly forget that. And then they also kind of expect it when you're like, man, they see you doing $1 million months, let's say, but they don't realize the cost to do $1 million month. And it's significantly increasing, right? And so, I don't think I ever felt guilty. I like to give back a lot. And I think that, I do believe I've earned it from massively hard work and just dedication. So
this is helpful. Okay. So take me into the moment where you feel like you shifted from like a person who has a vision and wants to do big things to like being met by the universe. Like, oh, wow, like this idea is having traction. Oh, I figured something out. Like, what was going on for that?
Ooh, I remember it like the day of, like it was yesterday. So I had went to a Tony Robbins event, and this was like 10 years ago. And I remember, I don't remember this at all, but my friend told me. So I love Tony Robbins, and I looked at my friend and said, one day I'm going to be on Tony Robbins' stage. And I
Yeah.
have to understand, I was like just a real estate agent at the time. I wasn't a coach. I was fearful of speaking in front of anyone. I called myself Krista, the wrong name one time when I was in front of like 10 people because I was so incredibly nervous. Literally, I called myself Krista Miller. I was Krista Mashore. That was my divorce name. And just because I was introducing a house at broker tour. But anyway, but it took me about 4 years before I made the move. And I was reading a book from Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. And one of the things that he said was that I used to read that book with, like, I had this nonprofit thing called Teens Lifting Lives, where I would, pay teenagers money to read a book with me and coach them for eight weeks, and that they would have to do all these things. Anyways, so I was reading it before that, and it said in there that many people have these nudges, the universe, God, the higher power, whatever you call it. Don't let the words get in the way of the message, but will say it's telling you should do this thing, right? And so I had every sign that was telling me to go out and start helping people in a different way. Like, Krista, you're so inspiring, you're so encouraging, you're so motivating, you should be a coach. Like, I heard it for about a year, and finally, as I was listening to this book and getting ready, I was just like, I'm doing this. And I picked up the phone, called my brother, and I said, hey, I'm going to be leaving real estate. He's like, okay, when? I'm like, tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow. So I need you to come over tomorrow, and I'm going to tell you how you can transition. And I just did it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's almost like this moment where you decide, I had my moment. I've had many moments, but I actually feel like I say that. And if you look back in your career, there's like 5 to 10 very defining moments where something starts working. You get a huge opportunity, totally absolute. That's why I love what we're doing with Wise Whisper. And by the way, the name Wise Whisper is that nudge that you're talking about. It's the Wise Whisper. And I accidentally called this agency that because I was refiling my company from New York to Florida. And I just needed to think of a name. And I always thought about Wise Whispers in my head, like little intuitive nudges. And then it was kind of like, I don't want to file another thing. I'll just call it Wise Whisper. And now here we are.
I love that name. Great name.
Yeah, it's funny because that's why I'm so inspired by what we do. It's like nothing has influenced my career like TEDx talks have. Like, not me ingesting them, but me giving them. Like, what has happened for me in my career, my authority, my lead gen, the amount of like random opportunities I would never think about, like a spokesperson deal for $500,000. Like, I wouldn't even have thought of that for myself.
Yeah.
And because of all the things that they invited to me, I formed a different path that I never would have thought of on my own. And I think that's what putting yourself out there in a big way does, is it invites things towards you haven't thought about for yourself, and it expands your aperture in ways you never have. Who has been the biggest expander for you? Is it still Tony? Do you read some sort of author, listen to some sort of podcast? Like, how do you expand your brain?
I do it all. I mean, everyone always asks me like who my mentor is, and like who's the one person, and it really hasn't been. I read every book you can imagine. I'm an avid learner. I used to be a teacher. I've got a master's degree in education and a bachelor's in psychology. And I love learning. And so I've learned from all of them. But one thing I have known is that I needed help, right? So when I first started to leave, because I was like making about $1.8 million a year as a realtor, bringing home about 1.5 million, doing really, really well. But I was so exhausted and tired, and I knew I wanted more, and I knew I wanted to help others. So leaving people told me I was crazy. Like, normal people don't leave their career at 47. Like, you're a lot younger than me. I mean, I was 47 years old, and 46 years old, and people would say, no, you should say what you're doing. And I couldn't do it anymore. I wanted more. So I left and just started. I immediately was watching a webinar. Russell Brunson was talking about expert secrets. I paid $15,000, flew down to Boise. And then within a couple of weeks, I spent like $15,000 more and joined his inner circle, and didn't know what the heck I was doing there. I knew nothing about anything. They were talking about funnels, and I was like, what's a funnel? Funnel cake, funnel what? And, took a picture of one of them, put it on my vision board. And, within 11 months, I had done $1 million funnel, my first $1 million funnel, but no one told me that it was going to cost me $1 million to make $1 million, right? Like, that's how it was. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was like tough, right?
Yeah.
So it was very hard to get the momentum. And I remember crying in the kitchen. My husband told me, like, I'm like, why did I do this? I was doing so good as a real estate agent. This is so difficult. And he was like, babe, do what you tell your students. Just keep going. And I was like, okay. And then I hit like 3 months later, I got another one. And then 2 months later, I got like, we literally did several $1 million within a 6-month period, but it took us almost a year to do the first,
Yeah, that's actually, I think, the position I'm about to enter into. And I think the thing I remember the most as I'm scaling my own company is like seasons.
Yes.
And it's so crazy for me, Krista, how much like, in your 20s and even in your early 30s, everybody, when you make mistakes, people are like, you're going to learn from those. And it's like, nobody wants to freaking hear that. Like, I don't want to learn from this horrible situation, right? Like I was in a crazy amount of debt at one point. I don't want to learn from this.
Yeah.
I don't want it to happen. But there are so many decisions that have been happening lately that my team is asking me, hey, should we go this route or this route? I'm like, definitely that route. I've already gone that route. Wasn't a good route. And it's like, oh my gosh, like understanding wisdom and how much faster you can go because of it is such a powerful feeling. But I will say that as you build, you probably have new ideas and maybe something that was working stops working.
Totally.
How do you work with your vision? Because that's something I'm constantly communicating with my team is like, this is what I want to create. This is what I want to happen. Yeah, just like, how do you be with yourself when maybe something's not working anymore and you need to have a new idea?
I think what you need to be thinking about is everything's always evolving and adapting. And one of the things that I had to learn is not to be playing catch up, right? So I'll give you an example. And that is that like every month for a long time, we would be doing a 3-day event, right? We'd hold a 3-day event. We'd have a high ticket offer. We'd sell high ticket. We were doing millions of dollars literally a month. And then all of a sudden we were like, what's happening? Things are changing. We're not converting as much. And it was because ad fatigue, the thing had been running for a year. We didn't realize that we should have changed it and adapted our ads, our strategy, our event, the name, all of these things, right? And so, oh man, so it's playing catch up when you're in it is very hard.
Yeah.
So understanding that good things always come to an end, right? Like in some form, like things change, people change, the economy changes, the world changes. You have to be willing to adjust and modify and try not to play catch up. Like even when things are good.
Yeah.
Somebody said something, I think it was Jason Fladlin, a friend of mine. He said,
I know Jason.
yeah, I just love him.
Yeah.
But he said, Krista, when you're doing good, you need to work even harder. He's like, so many people when things are good, which I do, but he's like, so many people when things are good, they sit back there. You need to be working harder because when things are bad, typically you need to kind of step back more because you need to be able to just outlast what's happening in the world and the market with the recession and everything, And I was like, oh man, many people don't do that. So, really taking extreme ownership, looking in the mirror and saying, hey, that didn't work. I should have adjusted this sooner. I've had to personally look at my own leadership styles in the past to where I wasn't being the best leader. I was expecting too much from my team or not expecting enough at times, not holding people accountable enough and thinking that, hey, they should be as excited as me when this isn't their company. I mean, you know how it goes. So it's like, I have to adjust even that. I mean, it's like, it's learning. I'm still learning every day,
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
A couple things about that. Sometimes I wonder as a person, like, when is it going to be enough? Like, what if Wise Whisper Agency just makes me X amount of whatever, and I just invest it and I just say, okay, I'm going to take a step back and this is enough and I'm going to live this way. Like, how do you spare yourself from burnout? How do you manage your own expectations? Because I had a webinar, I had a funnel that was cranking and I did about $6 million in 2 months when I was 25.
Holy
and
man.
I would share, yeah, but that was my debt. I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't know how to make decisions.
What was that webinar? What were you selling?
I was selling a job hunting course right after the recession and right at the beginning of Facebook ads.
Whew.
And I completely sabotaged my success, which is the template I grew up with and that I've been working on my whole life. But yeah, it was almost like I had this urgency to build it, and it was successful after failing a lot. And like you said, spending a lot of money trying to make money, and, passive income can be very active income. But I think, and that's how I met Jason Fladlin, by the way, was like, can you help me with my webinar? Because he's a, webinar.
Yeah, webinar genius.
Yeah. And he actually looked at it and said, wow, who wrote this? And I said, me. And he said, I don't think I can give you more on this. And so it was like this expertise that I developed.
That's amazing that he would ever say that, because he's like the webinar whisperer.
I know he is. He is. He is. It's interesting. Low key, a couple clients have asked us to write webinars, and it's like a little hidden offer that we don't really mess with, but we do them. But yeah, it's a little secret thing that I learned after bleeding, all my money and all my time and all my energy. And I got so burnt out as I gave the webinar 40 times. I did 80 split tests. Like I went in.
Wow.
Yeah, every slide. It was like an 87 slide webinar, and I wanted to shorten the length. And I was like, let me remove every slide from this recording. Let me see how I can make this better. And by the end of it, I had no energy left. And I think burnout is so freaking real. You said you have 2 daughters. Like, how are you juggling the success that you have? The pressure to keep creating? Like, how do you take care of yourself? How do you know when to stop? Do you know when to stop? I don't know. I'm just honestly for
Well, you
myself.
said something. You said, when will it be enough? And I think for people like you and I like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, like, oh, I'm never satisfied, but like, I'm always reaching for more. And it isn't even just money, right? Like, how do I be the best mom? How do I be the best? Like, I'm doing the morning miracle right now. I never even knew about the morning miracle. How do I be the best, give more to people? How do I, be more of an energizer person? How do I just like be a better guide? I mean, I want to be the best version of myself in every way. I have an extreme amount of energy, probably more than most people, just naturally. And I'm just very naturally driven. And I don't like, I fail a lot, probably more than most people, because I'm a very quick action taker.
Okay.
But I'll say something. I had a 37-year eating disorder.
Wow.
Where I was bulimic. And I used to use the excuse that it was because of the abuse, because a lot of abused people are bulimic or have some sort of eating disorder. Typically it's bulimic. And it got to the point where I was like, I was throwing up blood, and I was incredibly thin, and my concentration wasn't as good. And I actually was asked to do Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi's challenge. And I ended up utilizing my strategy that I use now for my $1 million a month model during that strategy. And I was going up against like Ed Milet and, Russell Brunson, who was my mentor at one time, like all these huge names that have millions of people on their list. And I ended up getting number 2 and the reason I fought so hard for it was because you get to meet Tony Robbins. And so I was like, maybe he can help me. So that was about year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I went to that, and that was my healing, my start to my healing. And I can now say that because I was getting burnt out, and I was getting exhausted, and I was getting tired. So I realized I have to take care of myself. My daughter actually came over one day and was just in massive tears and panic. Like, we are so worried about you, Mom. You couldn't hide it. The world didn't know, but my family knew. It was impossible for them not to know. And so, I listened to her, and from the healing of Tony and the start of it, it wasn't perfect, but it was the start of it. And then that day that she came over, I have been 100% healed since.
Wow.
And that was, so taking care of myself has been very important in this journey, because I am so driven and I can be nonstop. But I will say something, Ashley, which is I actually work less now than I ever have.
Wow.
And I do have, multiple, I do pretty well. I've got multiple companies that do good, because when I was a real estate agent, I was just like nonstop. When you're in the top 1% selling 100 plus homes a year, it's like, it was incredibly demanding. And so now it's like I end the day at 4, and I don't work weekends unless my husband's gone. I'm a educational guru and learning to make my stuff better. But yeah, I don't think people like us ever stop wanting more, not in a not satisfied way, but in a, like, I want to make a huge impact in the world. I want people to, when I pass, people to say, that woman helped change me, and that's, you can't put a price tag on that,
Yeah, for sure. And everybody's driven by something different. Like the artist in me wants to make art. And so I've always been driven to make a lot of money because I want the freedom, because I can't really, maybe this is a limiting belief system I have, but it's really hard for me to make the art I want to make. And that's usually in the form of like a poetry collection, or I'm just a very creative person. And I can't do that stuff when I have like a long to-do list and a lot of things happening. It's like, it's just really hard for my feelings to kick in, and for me to like really write what I want to write. And And so I've always been motivated, like, I need to be super successful before I become a mom so that I can pause everything and just be an artist. And I'm motivated by self-expression, I guess, impact through that. But it's interesting to even ask everybody listening, like, what motivates them. And also just going back to your eating disorder, like, I'm so happy for you that I grew up in Los Angeles, and when you said Hidden Hills, I don't know if that's in LA, but there's Hidden Hills in Calabasas. No?
Northern California. Yeah. It's in
Okay.
like Redding area.
Okay. Yeah. So growing up here, like, I was one of the only people that didn't have an eating disorder. And there was a high school. I went to Agora High School right next to Calabasas.
I
And
know
that's,
right where all that is. My
yeah.
ex-husband lived there.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Kardashian. And there was like a school for like all the kids that were like bad or whatever, called Indian Hills. And it was like, I don't know if that's still the stigma it has, but it was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
they had to go to Indian Hills, and
Yes. Yes.
what's that even mean, And I remember the girls that were in the Bling Ring movie, they all went to Indian Hills and left my high school. Um, but yeah, neither here nor there. I guess it was really hard to grow up in LA and not have an eating disorder. Like
Yeah. Well, the
every
world is like with social media and these kids' phones. I mean, oh my gosh, our poor teens are in a world of crisis right now with just teen suicide, and it's just so sad. But I would like to say something though about that eating disorder is like I learned more than ever about how powerful we are as humans.
yeah.
And that we really truly have the ability to do anything we put our minds to, because it's all about and I know mindset, people always say, and it's crazy because I actually wrote a book called Stop, Snap, and Switch. It's all about mindset, right? And I'm firm believer in mindset. I practice what I preach. This was the one thing I couldn't get over. And it's because I had tried so many times and failed. And I would say things like, I can never do this. This will never work for me. This is impossible. Like my brain was like, no matter what you do, you're never going to get over this. Like that was my conversation to myself.
Yeah.
And the day that my daughter came here and was like so mortified that I wasn't going to be around, I had to change my narrative.
Mm.
And once I did that, and I mean, I'm not kidding you, from that day, I have yet never thrown up again. I will never throw up again. It's funny. I have
Wow.
dreams about doing it. I wake up, I'm like, like,
Yeah.
because it's something that I can never do that to myself again, or to my family for that matter. But once I changed the narrative, when your brain says like, this is impossible, I can't do this, this will never happen for me, your brain literally is wired for the reticular activating system to get you everything that you're thinking and saying. And so when you have that thought, the feeling that's associated with the thought of never, impossible, can't, the feeling is like makes you feel defeated and it's impossible and it makes you feel like stopping and giving up. I would just say F it. Like F it. Like I'd try for a day or two and then it would get hard and I'd just say F it, this is impossible. And that would give me the excuse to go, that feeling of defeat and never going to happen. The action behind it was give up, right? Yeah. And that result was continuing to do it, repeating the cycle. Horrible for my daughters, horrible for my own health, so many things. And so once I said to myself, you can do this. You've done so many things. This is possible. Like anything can happen from here. You have control. You're responsible, and I just changed that narrative. And then I asked for help. First time ever in my life, really much asking for help. When you haven't lived at home since 13, you become very self-reliant. And so I asked for help from my best friends, and they knew, and they helped me with like eating, like my eating menu. And it was hard. Like I gained about 16 pounds. And when you're 5'2" and you're used to being, 110, to get to 135, 40, I mean, was like difficult for me. So I had to really, now my body's adjusting and it's becoming more normal, but still I'm heavier than I want to be.
Yeah.
It's like, but I just want everyone to know, like what you say to yourself, those thoughts that you're thinking, the I can't, the impossibles, I'm too young, I'm too old, it's too hard, I'm not good at this. Like all of those things are perpetuating more of that. Right. Yeah. So you have to change what you're thinking. And that's why I have this thing called Stop, Snap, and Switch. And it's like, I tell people, stop and recognize, like we have between 30 and 70,000 thoughts a day. 85% of those thoughts are negative. And of those 85%, most of them are repetitive. It's like repetitive negativity, right? Like me saying impossible. So I teach them to stop and recognize the thought, right? Snap the bracelet and then switch it to the other hand so that your brain and your body get in alignment, and then restate instead of I can't do this, it's impossible. It's like, I have everything it takes. Like I've done amazing things. I could do this, right? And once you get in that habit of recognizing how you're beating yourself up and how you're creating everything in your life, you start to realize, oh my gosh, like I'm creating this. And then the idea is to get so good at all the negativity. And it's things like, kind of like you said, like I'm doing the same story. I was growing up that way, right? Like this is the whole perpetual thing I've been doing, right? Like self-sabotaging. Even something as simple as that is, no, that was the old Ashley. That's not me anymore. Like I used to do that. Now I'm going to sell 200 to 300, TED Talks this year. I'm scaling like crazy. Like I can do anything right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then getting to the point where you get so good at what you're saying that you then start recognizing about all the things you're doing well.
Yeah.
Oh man, I did that. I just crushed it on Ashley's podcast. Like Ashley asked me all the right questions. It was such a great interview. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
Well, that's
is
the
game
thing.
changing.
It's like momentum creates momentum. And that makes me think to ask you about the tactical. You went from being like a top 1% real estate agent. I feel like a lot of people listening, going into a career path like that, they might think like, oh man, this is like I actually have one of my very best friends. She was Miss New York in 2021, Brianna Siaka. She's a realtor in New York. She's crushing it. But she kind of like started from the bottom, and there's a lot of mindset that goes into that. So other than the mindset side of it, when you started and it was like grassroots, what was the tactical that you think you were doing? Was there something special that you think just like really got things moving along?
Is this for real estate or coaching when I changed careers?
Either and both. I would really love like
Okay.
tactical, because I think the biggest thing obviously we hear from people is like, how do I get started? How do I make money? Right? Like,
Okay.
so like what was it that you did in either or both businesses that you think like really got the ground running?
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing in both. So basically, I knew that branding is everything. Like the reason why people advertise during the Super Bowl, $7 million for a 30-second commercial is because they understand the power of brand and attention, right? Attention is currency. The more eyes you can get on you, the more people can see you. You don't have to be the best. You just have to have more chances at bat, right? So when I got into real estate, I would look around and say, okay, what are people doing that's working, and what can I do different? So for example, this is a really dumb example, but it shows you how old it's been. 23 years, right? People would do a black and white flyer on a sign. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do a 4-page colored brochure. And then I'm going to put a little CD on the sign with a little, label on it with my contact information with 50 pictures. And then, it was like very different. And so as I sold my first house, and I put 30% of the money for marketing. And then I would do things like market on buses. I hired a guy for $6,000 for a 30-second commercial, and took that commercial and played it on our local Comcast and also in the movie theaters. And so my first year I sold 69 houses as a real estate agent. I mean, also I'll tell you, I was in dire straits. My husband left me at the time, drained our bank accounts. We just bought a brand new house. My daughter was sick. It was really bad. And I just left my full-time teaching job to take care of my daughter because she was ill. And the next thing I know, girlfriend's knocking at the door, driving my car, picking up my children, and no money. Like brand new house payment. He leaves, no money. Like he drained our accounts. And I was like, what the hell? So I had to like figure it out. But I just tried to really differentiate myself. And then secondly is that I learned how to be a marketer. If you want to be a top fill in the blank, you need to be a top marketer. So right when Facebook advertising came out, I flew and hired a coach, learned how to run Facebook ads, and learned how to do it differently. My goal, what I teach my students now, both in real estate and the coaches that I teach them to run brand awareness campaigns, video view campaigns, engagement campaigns where they're being seen. So it's like for like 0.04 cents or 0.01 cent, they're getting attention on themselves. So instead of asking people to click and download, they're educating, adding value, creating content that's really answering questions to their client avatar. And so it's a different process. It's video engagement. Hey, would you like to, like, now can I have your contact information, right? Whereas most people start with that, go to my seminar, download my thing, here's my book, or right. I end with that. And that's been very successful for every type of business that I've ran, is to utilize that. It's like, wow, how do I get more attention?
So it's like running a video of some content that's really valuable to your ideal customer, and then retargeting them with something else that asks for their contact information.
No, so it's like video, high value, next video, possible they can download, but they don't have to, like retarget again, right? Video. And then, hey, now would you like more? So it's like I call it earning the right to ask. So they're earning the right to ask.
Yeah.
So they are developing trust, being seen as the authority, getting people to feel comfortable. Like in times of economic recession, research shows that people need more trust, like the trust to purchase factor significantly goes up, right? So right now we're in a time like that. So people need more trust, and the cost per lead, the cost per acquisition has increasingly gone up, right? It's like, it is not the same. People used to talk about free ticket and the value ladder. No, that's why I teach high ticket, right? Because it's like, and you sell high ticket too, believe, you do, right? So if you start with free and then like, oh, buy my $7 product or buy my $200 product, like to get that to pencil is almost impossible now with the cost of running the marketing and everything going behind it. So the goal is, if I can start here with a bunch of free content and get as much exposure as possible without trying to acquire somebody's contact information and opt in and earn the right to ask, then when I go to ask them for a bigger one, it makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The old value ladder has kind of disappeared.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by ads. If they're like some sort of service provider or product producer, they think, oh my gosh, how do I get started? Ads teams charge a percent. They want ownership. They hear everything. There are affordable ads, people, and ads are easier than ever to set up. Not to say it's easy, but I have spoken to a lot of experts in the space. My friend, Bridget Orton, she's run probably $30 million of ads, if not more. And
Yeah.
she was just telling me just the other day, like, it's really much easier to learn it yourself. And I was just telling a client the other day, I'm like, you know what? I actually think you should learn how to set up your own LinkedIn ad, given where you are in your business. And maybe that's empowering to know that. Obviously, I'm not here for everybody to do everything all the time, burn themselves
That's
out.
one of the big ones though, because there's a lot. I mean, I've hired people and they charge so much, and it's like you said, it is not that complicated. Facebook's got great free trainings, and it's not that difficult, especially if you're anybody who does a local business. Oh my gosh, if you're a local business, it is for the cost of a few cups of coffee. Like, you can get hundreds of hours of watch time of people and thousands of engagements locally. It's so much. So if you're any kind of local business, right? Hair person, nail person, massage, any kind of a, esthetician or a dentist or a doctor, or chiropractor, real estate agent, lender, I mean, insurance agent, running local Facebook targeted ads to your community is gold, is gold. And then retargeting them and letting them be like, see you. I mean, I cannot go anywhere in my community. I mean, anywhere without I got told my husband, I could never have an affair because neither could you, because everyone knows that. Like, right? Like you can't go anywhere without people hugging me, talking to me. That's
That's so funny.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun. Like, I guess my final question is there something I haven't asked you about how you've created success on a tactical level that has been like for me, the thing before I started Wise Whisper, writing and booking 100 TED Talks, it's like the thing was my TED Talk. So I'm curious, like, what is there something special? I mean, these video campaigns are gold that you feel has been extra boosting that we can tell everybody.
I could tell you that. Yeah. So then I'll make this quick. But when COVID hit, I was at a point in my company where I was like at a 6-week burn rate. I had about $320,000 in my account. What my cost was about $247,000. It was crazy. Like, literally, I had 6 weeks and I was out of business. And COVID had happened, and I was like, I lost my whole entire sales department. I lost my marketing manager, and I lost my sales director, my human resource director, because they went into business to compete against me because we made it look so easy. And so I decided I need to start completely doing a turnaround. And we literally did a massive turnaround, started running virtual events. So I was like, we're going to do a virtual event. And I just started learning to sell my knowledge one to many. And since then, we have averaged $1.2 million a month on average the past 47, like 3.5 years in a row, through a virtual event model. So but again, I start the way I told you earlier, Ashley, which is like free ad content out there, driving traffic to a webinar. The webinar ticket is $47. That takes them to a 3-day event. At the 3-day event, I offer a $25,000 to $50,000, typically around $25,000 offer, and selling it that way, because they're in this whole, I call it indoctrinational, the ethical way, transformational event. I actually wrote a book called The $1 Million Month Model, and it talks about it like in really, really great detail. It was a game changer for my business. So anyone who has a business they want to sell, or has a product, or anything that will kind of help them with that, I would say that has been an absolute game changer.
not everybody watches on video, so it's called My $1 Million Months. My
Yeah,
Guide
it's
to
like,
$1
yeah,
Million Months.
My Guide to $1 Million Months. Yeah, My
That's
Guide to $1 Million Months. Krista Mashore, yeah. And
right.
actually look at Dean Graziassi and Jason Flatten wrote
That's so funny. Small world.
yeah, yeah.
Love those guys.
I
Okay,
love him.
cool.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing so candidly. The live events that you do, is it recorded or always live? Like, I know it's a live event, but do you do some
So
recording?
it's a virtual event, and then I did it 18, kind of like you when you said you did. I did it 18 months in a row live, some months twice. And every single time I tweaked, adjusted, modified, or tested something. Like one month I lost $900,000 because I tested the wrong thing. I was like, oh God, that hurt. And the
Yeah.
other months we were like, well, so then I would run it for about 5 or 6 months virtual with the team. It looked live because I had a live MC and I had live in the chat, but I didn't have to physically be present. So since then, we'll run it about every 5 months ish. We'll then re-record a new one because I want to make sure it's relevant and current to what's happening in the world with my avatar. Like for example, I just did it. It's been running 3 months this time, but I need to redo it because everything is changing right now in the real estate world. So for my real estate niche, I have to redo it again in August. So it'll be live, and then we'll take that one and we'll replay it, 5, 6 months, and then that's how we do it now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
been good.
Where can everybody find you if they want to get started or join one of your programs?
Yeah, so you can just find me online, obviously, or go to theprovenmodel.com, theprovenmodel.com, if you're a coach or a consultant or an expert. And if you're a real estate agent or lender thinking about that, you just go to Chris Limitless Listings, or just look up Limitless Listings. Krista Mashore Limitless Listings. Find me online. I didn't even wasn't prepared for that. That was my bad, actually.
You're like, I'm Krista Miller. I don't even know her.
Yeah, go look for that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I actually remember when I started my business, I met Marie Forleo for the first time. I really looked up to her, and we were wearing the same outfit, except for her pants were leather and mine were pleather. And I remember I'm like, nice to meet you. People say we're alike, and we look alike, except for you're wearing leather and I'm wearing pleather. And I was just like, oh my God, this has got to go.
Do you want to hear something so crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, when I told him I'm doing that's not gonna think I love you because you're so real. That's what I would do. So I've been doing the miracle morning, right? And partly because my mom, as I said, we just found out great news about her yesterday, but for 3 weeks we were kind of in limbo whether or not she had cancer, but she's doing good. So I was like, I need to be really super solid about my morning practice, right? So I started reading the miracle morning. A lot of what it says I do, but it's a little different. He explains it better than I do. And so one of my things was, who can I meet it put me in front of that we can help each other. Who can I meet? Because Tony Robbins says, ask the right questions, you get the right answers. Right. So my whole thing writing out was like, who can I meet? Who can you put me in front of that are going to make a big difference? So this guy, Evan Pagan, that I know, that I met. I
know Evan really well.
Yeah. He's so cute. He calls me. He's like, do you want to do this thing? I'm like, sure. So I get in there. He's like, well, John Assaraf and Kevin Walker and Joe Polish and Marie Forleo. I'm like, yeah, I know those people. Well, he puts me in this group with them, and I'm like, this is the craziest thing, because I'm sitting here asking this question. I end up getting this call. And the only reason I'm telling you is because you brought up Marie Forleo, but she's in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, the world, you get what you think, you get what you put into it, you get the energy you give, and it just works. So go read the Miracle Morning too, everybody.
This is such a good one. Thank you so much for coming on. You're so
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
I appreciate you and your time. This is amazing. And listen to her. She's, gosh, I love that she doesn't let her, you're so young. You have so much ahead of you. I love you didn't let that stop you. Keep going.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for saying that. Being seen by women like you actually really does a lot more for me than I think women like you maybe see. Because my best friend, Tracy Holland, she's one of my closest friends. She exited a beauty company maybe a few years ago, and she's like, you're me, you're mini me. And I'm like, that being seen in that way makes me, I just admire her so much.
You have to see yourself, Ashley. Do you not know, what you've created is incredible. I mean, you need to literally, that's one thing I wish I would have done more, and still wish, is I can't tell you how many times I lit this dumb. I look back and thought I was fat when I was 30, when I had 8-pack and I was the most gorgeous thing in the world. Yeah, and everything. It's like that. I'm like, when am I ever going to feel like it's good enough? You're doing so well.
Thank you.
Own that, and make sure you do that before you have daughters, because they will emulate what you teach them.
Literally, I volunteer for Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times summer camp for kids who have cancer, and they're all 10 years old. And I noticed that one started looking herself in the mirror the way I do. So
I was like, okay, like being emulated. So
Yeah.
thank you for the reminder. And I think everybody could use it. So everybody, I hope this did for you what it did for me. And I'm sending you all so much love. Thanks for tuning in to the U-Turn podcast. I hope you learned so much in this episode and you're putting it into action today. We would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Ashley Stahl or leave a written review if you're inspired. It would mean so much to us. Be sure to subscribe to the show because, as you know, the more subscribers we get, the better the guests we can bring you. And in the meantime, if you're looking to skyrocket your personal brand and impact millions, head on over to wisewhisperagency.com to learn more about how we are getting clients booked for the TEDx stage.